Achewillow. Season 8. Chapter 8. Things Whispered Between the Trees. The first rule of a crime scene is that you touch nothing. Books, television shows, and movies have taught the general public that ignoring this simple rule will, at best, corrupt any evidence, and at worst, implicate the wrong people. Leaving behind a stray hair or staining an object with one's fingerprints confuses an investigation, pointing at suspects that shouldn't be. Already, their footprints in the soft soil of the forest floor had tainted the scene, and with every further action, the compromise would deepen. The only proper course of action was to leave curiosity to the experts and immediately depart the area. This was a job for Detectives Wilson and Lamore. Let their collaborative efforts be what puts this gruesome puzzle together, not the amateur hands of three witches barely in their early 20s. But there was the rub. This was no ordinary crime scene. The blood, the stone altar, the very grass in which they stood, all were in a clearing of unnatural origin. What would forensics do with trees barely a few weeks old, but already the size of plants 2 or 3 years of age? What if they dug through the soil and found remains of the thorn gate and the many bones and artifacts woven through its branches? Not to mention the ever-present threat of the inhabitants of the forest. If a man like Richard David Pickering no longer dared set foot amongst the trees, what did that say about what lurked between birch, maple, and fir? Then came the question of who had built the altar in the first place. A quick look exchanged with Ophelia confirmed the edifice to be a complete surprise to us both. And finally, the most pressing and disturbing problem was that of the blood. I have the luxury of playing with all of these rational thoughts. While the scene is disturbing, it also has a certain beauty. Dying daylight cast upon a bloody stone altar in the middle of a lush green clearing. It's a memorable and even peaceful tableau. I've seen enough of the worst Achewillow has to offer that I can take a step back now. Not exactly dispassionate towards the implied violence, but able to keep from being swept away. The same can't be said about Annabelle. We prepared and planned for this journey, ventured into these dangerous woods, ready to face risks yet to be identified, all with one goal. The reason we're here is to find Mayor Veronique Lagacé, Annabelle's mother. Judging from the shaky steps she's taking towards the altar and the extended, trembling fingers of her hand, Annabelle believes we might have found her. "Annabelle," I call out, keeping my voice soft so as not to shake whatever emotional state she's in. Her head tilts, either in acknowledgement or to get a better look at a detail of the altar. Either way, she doesn't bother to react. Instead, she breaks every rule of crime scene etiquette and touches the blood. Her blood-stained index finger rises to her face, hovering an inch in front of her nose. She twists it around under the faint light, smells and inspects it, all the while biting her upper lip. I don't know what she expected to learn from this. She rubs her fingers together, thinning and spreading the blood between them. Walking closer and getting a better look, I see how thick and sticky it is. Old, but not that old. I'm no expert, but I suspect its age could be measured in a few hours at most. "Where's the body?" Annabelle asks, suddenly disgusted with the blood, wiping it off on the stone. "If she's dead, where's the body?" We don't know whose blood that is. I reach out to take her forearm in my hand. We don't even know if that's human blood. She shakes off my grip, frustrated but not angry. "One person goes missing in the woods and we find blood, a lot of blood, in exactly the spot she was headed to. The spot I sent her to." We can see the collapse happening in real time. Annabelle was introduced to the magic of Achewillow much the same way most of the children here are. Little touches dropped here and there as she grew up. First, the summer camp weekend known as the Wilds, then the Donselites as a teenager. All manner of events drizzled with vague yet inexplicable dressing. Despite being raised by the esteemed Veronique Lagacé, making her that much closer to the more dangerous side of town, Annabelle remained shielded from the worst, only dipping her toes into the true mysteries of Achewillow through her association with me. Since then, she's found a hunger in herself to learn more and do what I do, but in her own way. She's faced demons with me and created her own magical abomination that we had to dispel. Through it all, though, she's never known the same toll as someone like Ophelia or Olivia and Henry or Julia Remington and so many more in Achewillow. She's never had her deeds connected to a tragedy of her own making. Until now. Annabelle, I try to pull her away from the altar. Even if that is your mom's blood, we don't know that she's dead. At this range, the smell of iron is overpowering. It goes beyond the blood, and even the effects of my special brew cannot account for the strength of the odor. Never have I thought of the fragrance of metal this way, but standing here in the middle of the clearing, it stinks of iron. The tip of my sneakers brush against the stone, staining the tip with a dark red. As night swallows the forest, color recedes, but the cherry crimson of blood seems to only gain in saturation. Miriam's right, Ophelia adds, tiptoeing to stand with us without marring her own shoes. It looks like a lot of blood, but there's no pieces of flesh or bone. I don't see any occult symbols or paraphernalia, so I doubt this was part of any ceremony. For all we know, the shedding of blood is part of the ritual to close the Hell Gate. But there is no Hell Gate, Annabelle snaps. It's less anger than confusion and panic. The fingers with which she touched the blood quiver as if they were trying to detach themselves from her hand. Ophelia looks at me, hoping for some support, but I, too, am coming up short. Her lie is apparent. This is a non-negligible amount of blood. If it is Veronique's, and she's still alive, she's probably in bad shape. We can't escape how far out of our depth we are. This is the second night we go off with good intentions, trying to solve another of Achewillow's mystical mysteries, only to come short in our abilities to handle things. I could have told her, Annabelle spirals. I should have told her. She had no reason to come here. She'd be home or at work right now, instead of dripping off some pile of rocks in the goddamn forest, all for this stupid joke. What's the point of being a witch if I can't do anything to keep my friend from succumbing to her worst thoughts? I can't just brew a quick and soothing cup of enchanted chamomile. I don't have vanilla cookies to comfort her heart. All I have is a few drops of leftover coffee that only serve to make things worse. Ophelia also looks out of tricks, her face a visage of worry and fear. I expect that she's looking into a mirror right now, watching as someone else experiences the grief that's been plaguing her the majority of her life. I can smell the salt in Annabelle's tears and hear her heartbeat quicken with each faltering breath. Her pupils are large black discs, leaving little room for the blue of her irises. Hey, 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 I repeat, taking both of Annabelle's hands in mine, pulling her away from the altar and into the tall grass. Look at me, look at me. Our knees digging into the dirt, sodden with dew and mud, I force my friend to look into my eyes, or failing that, look in my direction. Her back to the altar, I'm hoping that the blood can leave her mind if it leaves her sight. I know it's tempting to panic right now, but we don't have time for that. I take her hand and bring it up to her face, showing her the red-tinged fingers she tried to wipe clean. That blood is fresh, I explain. Maybe it's your mom's and maybe it's not, but whoever it is, they're probably still alive and in need of help. And I hesitate to add more, worried that offering false hope could be a mistake, but I jump in. And if your mother was here, and that is her blood, then whoever spilled it is probably in far worse shape than she is. Because if I've learned anything about Veronique Lagacé since moving here, it's that she's one insufferably tough bitch. Annabelle lets out a sound between a sob and a chuckle. It's like an aborted cough where she's swallowing air instead of expelling breath. A pained smile fights its way on her lips as she pulls her hand out of my grip and wipes the snot from her nose. Finally, her breathing comes back under control. She turns around to take one last glimpse at the bloody altar before shaking the image from her eyes. Frowning, Annabelle stares at the ground, punching the soil with her snot-smeared fist a few times in an effort to get a grip on herself. "Yeah," she murmurs after swallowing hard. "God have mercy on whatever poor bastard cut my mom." She looks up, bloodshot eyes locking with mine, then shifting over my shoulder. "Miriam, I think we have company." Their presence is like a breath, brushing up the back of my neck. Hard to notice at first, impossible to ignore once noticed, and threatening the whole duration. They've been here a while. I know it not because of some subtle clues picked up by my enchanted senses, but rather from a gut feeling. Unlike Detective Wilson, who loves to rely on hunches and instinct, I like to think myself more rational. This pretense usually doesn't stand up to being in the kitchen, where whim and guesswork lives alongside scientific precision and planning. It also falls apart here. Achewillow Forest is a place of shifting geometry and ambiguous safety. One night, the youth of the village will gather to dance and drink as if the trees were a nightclub or disco. The very next, monsters will pour out from the underbrush. In a way, these woods are like a wild animal, barely domesticated. Under the right conditions, it is tame and gentle, easy to approach and interact with. But it doesn't take much for it to return to its natural predatory state. We see them in shimmers at the edge of the clearing, shadows winking at us to announce their presence. A quick inspection of the periphery shows that they surround the entire area. Annabelle and I stand, straightening our backs and raising our chins. Ophelia is already standing at attention in a similar manner. It's a strange and natural reaction to this encroaching feeling of dread and majesty now pouring into the clearing like so much rolling fog. The feeling is invasive but unmistakable. We are in the presence of our betters, and they command our acknowledgement, or at least they believe themselves such and demand appropriate respect. We've met not so long ago. Back then, there was an ambassador that spoke for us. Giselle, the daughter of the butterfly wing salesman, served as our interpreter. She knew how to speak to them and what proper etiquette is demanded. But Giselle isn't here tonight, and etiquette could be the difference between life and death. There's a song in the air, spoken with voices like bells. The light of the nascent moon seems more intense in the clearing, darkening the shadows by contrast. Everything is loud and oversaturated, details of the forest overwhelming my senses. It's like a glut, making my brain feel as full as an oversatiated belly. "What's going on?" Annabelle whispers, adequately worried. "Shh," Ophelia commands, her voice soft. "It's the Fae," I explain, making my voice as reverential as I can. I'm not sure this is the exact name for the creatures. Much like the demons we encounter, they inherited whatever name felt suitable. But these are not the Sidhe of Irish folklore or the fairies of modern mythologies. However, they do comport themselves with similar haughtiness and insistence on decorum. Knowing so little about them makes interactions dangerous, like picking random plants to make herbal tea. It also makes asking what they call themselves perilous at best. The quiet standoff seems to last forever, and the darkening sky testifies to minutes dripping away like a broken faucet, until finally, "Come out, A silkily soft voice calls from the edge of the woods. It's a sing-song melody of words, like what a child would say when playing a game of hide-and-seek. The faceless voice, however, has a menacing undertone that rattles the inner ear. "We mean you no harm," another voice promises, this one like wind through the leaves. Annabelle, either curious or impatient, takes a step forward. Again, my hand reaches for her, but before my fingers can even brush her arm, she turns to look at me. I shake my head no. I remember the words of one of these creatures spoken to Ophelia and me when we were trying to negotiate for missing children. You are no friends to us. It was a threat then and resonates with as much menace tonight. Achewillow has taught me to respect the dead and the damned, and those are forces for which I have some level of measure. What awaits beyond the edge of the trees is varied and impossible to quantify. They are a pantheon of randomly assorted gods and demigods, each an individual mystery. We only want to talk. A third voice snakes out of the shadows, a wisp of mist reshaped into sound. Annabelle's face contracts into a mask of apology, lips trembling as she summons enough courage to do the unthinkable. Maybe they saw what happened to my mom, she says, pulling away from my touch. Annabelle! But she's off, too sudden and too fast for me to intervene. Before I can catch up, she's already been swallowed whole by the trees. Eyes wide and throat tight, I wait a few seconds for what comes next. What do I expect? A flash of light? A silencing of the shimmers that betray the Fae's presence? Perhaps there will be a thunderclap and malicious laughter as my friend is taken away to lands unknown. Do we? Ophelia asks, creeping to my side. Do we go after her? I shrug, still unable to blink. All for one, is my only answer before I, too, make my way out from the apparent protection of the moonlight. We don't make it very far before spotting the bright pink bandana and crystal blue hair of Annabelle. She didn't make it very deep into the woods before coming to a stop, surrounded only by overgrown ferns, sturdy old maple trees, and a handful of birch that stand like pale phantoms in the shadows. There are no signs of whoever called out to us. The voice beckoning with promises of safety are silent now, leaving us to wonder if we even heard them at all. We're protected, right? Annabelle asks, without turning to look at us. I mean, yeah, Ophelia tries to assure, but lacks conviction. Assuming legends hold true and all that. A gust of wind, too strong to have made it into the forest this far, shakes the branches and leaves of the trees around us. The birch seems to sway for a moment, dancing to a slow beat out of earshot. There's a twist of the shadows alongside Annabelle, like light folding on itself. The silhouette of a branch, cast over her right shoulder, unfurls itself, taking on a more human shape with every twist and bend. It's like an insect abandoning its camouflage, revealing its true nature to the world around. Except, instead of a multi-limbed critter, it's a boy hanging upside down from the closest maple. I've seen him before, raven-haired and dressed like a Victorian schoolboy. He's got skin as pale as a pearl. When he smiles, there are nothing but pointy teeth on display. The eyes we can see are kind, but with a hint of mischief. The real horror of him is on his forehead, where a set of spider-like eyes dart around in all directions. He twists his head, nearly brushing his lips on Annabelle's neck before he speaks. Oh, he says, his voice like a bolt of silk being pulled over varnished wood. You smell of grief and regrets. May I have them? Annabelle jumps back as if she just walked through a spider web. She cries out when coming face to face with the boy, but all he does in return is lick his lips. Don't agree to anything, I warn Annabelle, taking a few quick steps to stand beside her. And you, I point to the boy, still hanging from the branch. Stay away from my friend. Now, he says, slowly using his perch to flip down to the ground and onto his feet, his hair mercifully hiding the hideous eyes on his skull. I just want a nibble. She doesn't want them anyways. Tread carefully, Miriam, I tell myself. No matter how small he might look, the size of an 8 or 9-year-old, there's no telling what he's capable of, or how many others like him are hidden around us. Taking a cue from my behavior, Annabelle also steps up to the boy, making her own attempt at intimidation. Fists clenched, chest puffed out, she looks ready for a fight I hope doesn't happen. The tactic doesn't work as well as we'd hoped. The boy, his movements quick but precise, reaches out for Annabelle. His fingers, moving like those of an old woman caressing a cat, go up to her face, stroking the side of her chin. He cries out, recoiling as if Annabelle was made of burning pitch. Mother, mother, they come bringing terrible gifts. The boy with the spider eyes crawls back to the tree from which he fell, pushing his back against the bark and his body into shadows. All the while, he recites a litany of words that have no meaning to me, but which I'm sure are curses and insults. At least we know Ophelia's wards work. Hush, a new voice interrupts, deep with authority. One of the birch trees, from the copse that seem to dance with the wind, cracks and crumbles. Branches bend backwards, flowing to the forest floor like hair. White bark flexes like sinew, and the tree seems to disgorge another figure, this one tall and lithe and pale. More plant than human, it still walks like a person, putting one foot in front of the other. It's a performance, however, like a dancer imitating an ocean wave. This is for us to behold, and no one else. The boy falls silent. You are bold to come here so armored, the birch says, looking down on the 3 mortals that crept out of the clearing. You wear it like your own fears.
Well, yeah,
Annabelle speaks up, ignorant of the minefield of decorum she's navigating.
Look at you. You're terrifying. There's blood on those rocks back there, and this one is talking like he's going to eat my grief. Of course we wear our fears.
The boy scuttles back next to Annabelle, looking up at her with sudden surprise. He almost takes her hand, slow and gentle this time, but restrains himself at the last moment. I'm sorry, he repeats, sincerity woven into his words. I mean no harm. I was merely offering respite. A burden from you is a treat for me. His mouth cuts his face in half with a smile too large and lips too thin. The whole forest bristles, and for a second, the veil that keeps the other fae hidden is pulled from the world. Like the shimmer I witness from the clearing, it's a betrayal of their true numbers, and they are legion. The birch must have noticed my unease, as it does its best imitation of a crouch. Mushrooms on its bark part, revealing eyes that do a commendable job of looking human. Wood splinters into a mouth, but like a ventriloquist's dummy, it only gives the illusion of speech. Our debt to you and the weaver grant you some leeway, Miriam Dufour, but gratitude only goes so far. Debt? I ask, struggling to figure out what it is the fae owe us. Not that I don't welcome a reprieve for once, but these are capricious and arrogant creatures we are set against. It is always best to keep our credit clean when dealing with such entities. You could feel it if not for the trinkets you wear to protect yourself. The soil is rich anew and the air is lush again. You freed our goddess and purged the corruption from this place. A wrong has been brought right, and for that, we owe you. With fingers of thin branches and twigs, the birch flips the hem of my apron, careful to avoid Ophelia's embroidery. Okay, Ophelia pipes up. Then maybe you can pay us back and offer up a little help? She tries to make her words pleading, but the natural tone of her arrogance comes through a little, forcing a shiver up my spine. The fae, however, remain unfazed. Safe passage, the birch says. Seems fair enough a payment considering what you've done. I flinch at the accusation. What we've done? We've released the nature goddess these creatures worship. We closed the portal through which demons could come into our world. I thought that what we've done was our leverage, not a debt. Biting my lip to keep my cool, I struggle to formulate a retort that is both direct and keeping with etiquette. No matter how much I would like to believe the opposite, we are not in a good negotiating position. Mother, the Fey boy speaks up before I have a chance. These are different mortals, different people. They did nothing to trespass, nothing to offend, that we know of. The boy turns his attention back to us, a touch of suspicion in his human eyes. The birch stands, then leans in again. Half a dozen more mushrooms growing on its back peel open like eyes of its own, studying Annabelle, Ophelia, and me. It hits me how, under the right circumstances, these might have been called demons too. Everything's a demon if it's strange and dangerous enough. Perhaps, the birch speaks up, deep and low. Perhaps not. Regardless, until they have more to offer, safe passage is all they shall receive. I have spoken. With that note of finality and with a chorus of wet sounds, the 8 or 9 eyes on the birch close into mushrooms once more. Ponderous as only a tree can be, the birch turns around, intent on shuffling back to its roots. It is done with us. Annabelle, however, is not done with it.
Wait, what trespass? Who was here before us? What did they do? Maybe we can help.
Both my and Ophelia's eyes grow wide, and we shake our heads in unison, the universal signal for shut up. Annabelle is bargaining, and the last thing we want are promises and oaths made towards the Fae. The birch pauses, 3 fresh eyes opening on its back. Cracking bark resonates as it adjusts its position to answer, and I hear that sound echoed by many trees in the area. The trespass, it says. Cold metal buried around the clearing, forbidding us access to a sacred site. The blasphemers, others like you, as many as you have fingers on both hands. Dig up the metal, bring us the offending mortals. Then we can negotiate further terms. You think Pickering knows? Ophelia asks as we make our way back through the forest. The birch creature didn't leave us much choice in the matter. While I could see Annabelle ready to fight for cooperation, she realized quickly the wisdom in cutting our losses. Hints of other so-called Fae followed us for part of the journey. Evergreens that seemed to rotate as we walked in their shadow, monitoring our progress. An owl with 6 wings flew into our path twice, staring us down with massive golden eyes as it did so. The ever-present giggle of children from behind every bush pushed us along, hurrying our step whenever we slowed down. Only once far enough from the clearing did the forest leave us alone. Yeah, I answered, dejected. He's never been afraid of going into the forest before. Careful, sure, but never worried. Is it me, or did those Fae seem bolder to you? I don't have much experience with them, Ophelia shrugs. But they did seem a little more aggressive. Hard to tell when talking to a tree. Night has taken a firm hold of the forest now, and we're navigating mostly by flashlight and memory. Part of me trusts that if we were lingering too long, the woods themselves would spit us out in short order. The encroaching cold and ever-present darkness makes me eager to get out from under the canopy and back into Pickering's fields. Our pace, however, is slowed by the trailing steps of Annabelle, who seems in no hurry to leave. Your mom's not dead, I say, unprovoked but with as much authority as I can muster. They'd have mentioned it if she was. Of course, I have no way of proving that. For all I know, the Fae themselves took Veronique Lagacé back to wherever they come from, and she'll never be seen or heard from again. But I have to do something to keep Annabelle from collapsing.
My mom's not dead,
she says, making a valiant effort to square her shoulders and show her strength.
Because Mom's too stubborn to die without taking half the forest down with her. The same way Helen Edna can't die until the proper paperwork's been filed.
She offers a strained smile, doing her best to put up a brave facade, but the cracks are already obvious.
Wait,
I say.
Is that true about Helen?
It takes a moment for Annabelle to catch on. After all, few are the times when I crack a joke, let alone in this grim context. It doesn't earn me much beyond a chuckle, but under the circumstances, that's more than enough.
I wouldn't be surprised,
she says, holding on to the bit. The levity is short-lived. Through our timid laughter, even joined in by Ophelia's, we hear the rustling of branches and leaves. Too loud to be a squirrel or chipmunk, too high to be a deer or fox, there's an insistence to the noise. Coming from a single point in the canopy above, it rules out a stray gust of wind. The phenomena is too similar to so many I've already experienced in this forest, and after a bloody altar, enigmatic fae, and the possible demise of my friend's mother, I'm not sure I have stamina for more.
Hello, hello.
A familiar, silky voice calls out from above. Something of a relief to learn that the threat is familiar, but I refuse to make the mistake of thinking it less on that account. As one, we look up, seeing exactly what we feared and expected. Toothy's smile splitting his small round head, the boy with spider eyes climbs down from atop. Face down, grinning, he looks like a deranged predator dropping down on fresh victims. Only once a few feet from our heads does he let himself fall, doing a half flip to land on his feet between us. It's tempting to scramble and make a break for it, and I wouldn't blame either of my companions for doing so, but there's something in the way the boy announced his presence that suggests to me that he means no harm. He takes a moment to straighten his jacket and brush any twigs and leaves from his impeccably pressed pants. I wonder for a second where he got the uniform, or if he conjured it himself to match something he'd seen.
Don't worry,
he reassures.
My mother can't listen to us here, but I wanted you to know.
He's addressing Annabelle. Instead of threatening to take her fear and grief, however, he's fishing through his pockets. He reminds me of a child trying to fetch a last piece of candy that he just knows was there a moment ago. Instead, it's a piece of folded paper he pulls from his jacket.
I saw them,
he declares, offering his prize up to Annabelle.
The people in the clearing. I saw them, and one of them dropped this.
Carefully, like an archaeologist unraveling an ancient parchment, my friend unfolds the paper, giving it a careful examination before frowning in confusion. She then turns the paper around, revealing a familiar sign emblazoned with a dozen eclectic religious symbols.
What the hell is the Achewillow Occult Enthusiasts Club?
Achewillow is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Achewillow to donate. Achewillow has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Achewillow for details. Follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram under the username Achewillow.